wireless sensor networks part 2. So, in the part 1 we have looked at some of the basics of wireless sensor networks. In the next couple of lectures we are going to go through different other advanced topics on sensor networks, but before we do that, in this lecture we are going to look at some of the different applications of sensor networks and few other advanced topics, some of the advanced problems, some of the problems more concerning how sensor networks can be used in practice for practical purposes under different circumstances, different scenarios to help address different problems. So, we will look at some of the specific problems, and some of them actually are these works were done by us, by our researchers in our group, and so we are going to have a look at them as well. And so we will look at the first thing that we are going to see is nowadays actually nowadays social sensing has also become very popular. So, social networks have become popular, and human beings, they look around, they have certain kind of feeling, and then so whatever they see, whatever they observe, then accordingly they start entering their ideas, and whatever they have witnessed, they start entering the information into the social media like Facebook, Twitter, etc. And so, in one of these papers, which again is authored by us, so what was done is we explored how social networks and how social sensing can be integrated with wireless sensor networks in order to monitor rare events. Rare events could be like events like for example earthquakes, volcanoes, etc. So, these are events which do not occur frequently, regularly, and so on. So, how social networks can be integrated with wireless sensor networks in order to adjust the duty cycle of wireless sensor networks. So, what is meant by a duty cycle we will cover later, but it is something like that how much is the active time, a time for which a particular node is going to be active with respect to the total time duration that the node is going to function or remain active and in the sleep state. So, this is something that we will cover in a later lecture. So, this is one example. This is an example where social sensing integrated with wireless sensing, sensor networks, Facebook integrated together. So, what happens is, let us say that rare events like the ones that I mentioned, for example, if there is some kind of a calamity or something like that. So, in such cases, so these calamities, they do not occur quite frequently, right. So, they occur rarely. So, instead of keeping the sensor networks active at all times and waste the very limited energy in these different nodes, what was suggested by us is, what was proposed by us is that based on the social media, based on this thing, how people are reacting. So, based on those, to adjust the duty cycle of these sensor networks. So, that means that the the duty cycle of the sensor networks basically can be dynamically adjusted based on the feedback that is received from the social media, and that is quite obvious. I do not think that I need to elaborate more on this particular concept. So, this is pictorially, this is how it looks. So, basically what we have done is we come up with a probabilistic duty cycle model for wireless sensor networks, and this basically accumulates the information from the social media to identify the occurrence probability of a rare event and adjusts the duty cycle of the sensor nodes using a particular method. So, which is called the weak estimation learning automata method. So, I am not going to go through this now, and it is not required for one unless somebody is heavily interested in the research aspect of it. So, this is just to give a flavor of how social networks can be integrated with wireless sensor networks. Another I have already told you that sensor networks have large number of different applications. Another application is use of sensor networks in the mines. So, and there are different aspects of sensing that can be performed inside the mines. So, if we are talking about coal mines, for example, in the coal mines, sensors and sensor networks can be deployed to monitor the occurrence of mine fire and generating alarms if there is indeed a mine fire, or even going further, that not only generate alarms, but also actuate the valves, the water pipes that would close that would stop the fire from spreading further. So, let us let us look at this particular figure that we see in front of us. So, in this particular figure we show a particular type of coal mining, which is known as the BORD, board and pillar coal mining. So, in the board and pillar coal mining, what happens is there are different columns, these pillars that are kept and the coal is extracted from the areas around these pillars. So, basically coal is never extracted continuously and in a particular coal mine, for the reasons because if it is done in that way, then the particular area where mining is done in that way, that in such an area there might be roof fall. So, the roof fall means that the upper strata might collapse because coal is taken from the lower strata, and because of the vacuum that is created because of this particular type of extraction, coal extraction, the roof might collapse, and that is the reason why these pillars are left and coal is extracted from surrounding these pillar areas. So, here what we see is that in such a board and pillar coal mining approach, for sensor networks can be used, sensors can be deployed. Since these are the different sensors that are deployed, there are temperature sensors, there are gas sensors, there are transceivers. So, these sensors they can sense the temperature, the gas, and gas could be methane, sulfur dioxide, and different other coal mine specific gases. These gases through a multi-hop path could be sent to the transceiver station, and from the transceiver station further they can be sent to the centralized controller, and typically these centralized controllers are on the surface of the on top of the mine, so not underground. So, this is how the sensors are placed. So, we have one particular pillar, and in the four corners of the pillar you have 4 different temperature sensors, and these temperature sensors are going to measure the temperatures around them. So, how many sensors are going to be put? Although here we have used 4 different sensors, but another design might think of either increasing the number of sensors or decreasing, depending on the specific coverage that has to be obtained for fire monitoring around in the coal mine, in the space around the coal mine. So, this is what I had just explained to you. So, there are different pillar junctions that are used, and these are the pillar junctions which basically would prevent these pillars are the ones which are going to prevent the roof fall, and in the 4 corners in the pillar junctions basically the temperature sensors are put, and there are 2 sensor nodes that are put at the inlet and the outlet of the working panel to continuously detect other gases like carbon monoxide and oxygen gas concentration, and alarms are generated if certain threshold of these gases and temperature are crossed, and then together we use some kind of intelligence, some algorithm, and then if indeed there is something, an alarm is generated, concurrently water is poured using in the hazardous location, using the water pipes, by actuating the water pipes, and then the entire thing is continuously monitored, and the intensity level of the temperature, the gases and so on are monitored from the base station, from the control station. Wildfire detection is another very important issue, important application of using sensor networks. Wildfire means forest fire. So, forest fire is something which is very common not only in India, but also abroad. So, so as we already know that once there is some forest fire that occurs, it is very difficult to control the spread of the fire. So, that is the reason why why there is often big losses in of natural resources once a forest fire or a wildfire strikes. So, in one of our works we basically worked on it, how we can use sensor networks in order to monitor the occurrence of wildfire and the spread of wildfire. So, so as we can see over here, these are the different sensor nodes that are deployed in a particular terrain, and these are the zones around these nodes which are monitored, and then there are different agents which basically monitor these the phenomena that are occurring around these zones, and then we get some reinforced path on the basis of which nodes are providing or continuously streaming the fire information, and these paths are finally used for sending the data continuously to the base station or the sink node. So, this is how these agents work around these sensor nodes, and these sensor nodes are placed, and these agents basically work around them. So, these are, so in this particular case the kind of agents that we have used are the ant based agents. So, we have used the theory of ant colony optimization. So, we do not again need to understand how ant colony optimization works. It is basically the use of ants and the way the ants basically forage, and the foraging behavior of the ants is adopted to come up with simple heuristics which can be used to find the different paths that can be used for sending the sensed data from the source nodes to the base station. I already mentioned earlier that wireless sensor networks, one of the important applications of wireless sensor networks is healthcare, and this is again something that, just for your information, that many people worldwide, including in our group in IIT Kharagpur, we have done a lot of work on the applications of wireless sensor networks for healthcare monitoring, for remote healthcare monitoring and so on. The specific type of wireless sensor network that is formed by putting these different sensors, the physiological monitoring sensors, physiology monitoring sensors like ECG, body temperature, blood pressure and so on. These sensors, they can be placed on a human body in different places to measure the physiological condition of the patient, and these together, these sensors, they can be connected with each other, and these data, the sensed data, they can be they are sent to an entity called the centralized entity called the coordinator, and from the coordinator the data, the sensed data, the aggregated sensed data is sent to the health monitoring system, and from the health monitoring system the data are accessed by doctors and nurses for efficiently monitoring large number of different patients at the same time. So, these healthcare sensor networks or the wireless body area networks, they basically they can be used for different more specific, super specific applications of use of wireless sensor networks or body area networks for elderly patient monitoring, monitoring the quality of life of the patients, how the patients behave, how the elderly patients, how they behave in their homes, in their old homes and so on. So, this is something that is very important. The other important thing is so remotely basically these patients or the elderly people who are not even the patients, maybe who are vulnerable to different things like falling down and so on. So, they can be remotely monitored by the caregiver centrally from one central point, large number of different elderly people, they can be monitored. So this is one thing. Second thing is, in the hospitals these networks can be used. Third is for children. Children often have different abnormalities. Children have often, children are born with different health abnormalities, medical abnormalities. Children have different other problems, and they are not able to express themselves. The difference between children and elderly people, or like normal normal means like other grown up adults, is that the grown up adults, they can express themselves, whereas the children, they cannot. So special types of sensor networks can be deployed on these children who are not able to express themselves, and so that these children, they can be remotely monitored by the doctors or their parents, and so on. So there are different aspects of use of wireless body area networks. Wireless body area networks clubbed with social choice theory. Social choice theory talks about giving fairness to the different nodes, and how so let us say in a healthcare scenario, there what is very important is that certain patients are often they need more care than the other patients. So and this thing is time varying. At certain point of time, certain patients who earlier may not have needed more care or more attention, at a later instant of time they might need more focused care. So accordingly, so they need more care. So similarly, if there is a patient who is suffering who is going to suffer from a heart attack, who is going to have a heart attack, so such a patient, when such a patient is monitored through a body area network, the data that is sensed from such a patient, that is more important compared to a patient who is suffering from fever, for example. So health criticality of the data, the data, that means the packets and that are obtained from these critical patients, and that is very important. And it is very important that there should be more improved services, network services, that should be offered to these patients compared to the other patients who are not very critically sick. So that is why in one of our works we have explored the use of the theory of social choice in order to enforce fairness of data delivery in a cloud enabled wireless body area network. So when we talk about wireless sensor networks in healthcare, things which are very important are that, as I was telling you, that certain packets might have more importance, should be given more importance compared to certain other packets. So some packets should have lower priority, some packets moderate priority, some other packets higher priority, based on the health parameters of the patient who is being monitored. So in this particular work, this is an application of wireless sensor network for healthcare. So in this particular work, what we do is we tune the payload of the packets from in a wireless body area network, and accordingly we try to make the network efficient. So payload tuning, in addition to payload tuning, we also have come up with a solution for tuning the time slot. So time slot tuning is another thing. So typically, frequency division multiplexing is used to send the data from the source nodes to the sink node. So depending on the criticality of the health data and other factors like energy dissipation, time elapsed, and so on, certain nodes and the packets that they send, they should be given higher importance compared to the other nodes. And this is something that I have already mentioned in a different way, in a different context. Another application of wireless sensor network is target tracking. Target tracking means it is object tracking. Some object has to be tracked. So there are two different scenarios that I am going to show you. First, in this particular scenario, a particular animal is being tracked. The activities of the animal the movement of the animal is being tracked using with the help of the sensor nodes that are shown over here. So here basically what happens is the sensor nodes, they send the sensed data in a push based manner. So they would sense the data of this activity of the animal, and they are going to push it towards the sync node. On the other hand, this is an example of tracking where a query is, it's a pole based formulation. So where a query is sent first, and this particular sensor node, it sends the response back because it is the one which is sensing the activity of this particular animal. And guided formulation is another third type of formulation where some nodes basically define a trajectory to the target. Some nodes define the trajectory to the target, okay, and the target the tracker basically follows this trail to intercept the target. So basically, to clarify further, so what happens is, along with this particular sensor node, so along with this particular animal, the animal might be tagged with something which will force this animal to move in a particular way, and that way these particular sensor nodes which are close to the track of the movement of this particular animal, they can be activated, and that is known a priori, and the movement of the animal can be tracked accordingly. There are different basic components of target tracking using wireless sensor networks. The first thing is to detect the target. So this is what is shown pictorially over here, that there is a target, so that has to be detected first. The second thing is, cooperatively the nodes would have to track the movement of the target. The third is the position computation. Position computation means that with respect to each of these nodes, where with respect to the three positions of the sensor nodes, where this particular animal is physically located at a particular instant of time. And then what happens is, as the animal moves further, again trying to redo the same thing, recompute the position, the new position with respect to three other nodes maybe, and try to understand what is the new location, new position of the animal. Energy management, I do not need to elaborate further. Energy management is is a very fundamental issue. And additionally, recovery. So once the animal is detected, it is trying to be tracked. So trying to recover the data of the movement of the animal, and whatever is supposed to be sensed, recovering that data, that becomes important. So these are primarily the 6 different important components of target tracking using wireless sensor networks. As I told you earlier, that sensor networks are used in agriculture as well. Agriculture, there are a large number of different issues in an agricultural field. One of the issues is basically that, particularly in a country like ours in India, what we have are agricultural fields where the crops and the agricultural produce in the fields, they are basically they are vulnerable to theft. They are not only vulnerable to theft from humans, but also any other animals like goats and cows and different other cattle. They might get, if they get into the field, they might damage lot of the agricultural produce like the crops and the and the other agriculture, the food commodities that are produced in the field. So these so we proposed a mechanism, a prototype for agricultural intrusion detection using wireless sensor networks. So this is, if this is an agricultural field, we place different sensors around the field, sensors that we have used. This is a work that we have actually implemented. A prototype of this work has actually been implemented in our agricultural field in IIT Kharagpur, and what we have done is, we have used 2 types of sensors, but the other types of sensors might have also been used, would have also been used. So we have used in our work 2 sensors. One is the passive infrared sensor, the PIR sensor, the other one is the ultrasonic sensor. So basically, when an intruder enters into the agricultural field through the boundary or the perimeter of the field, the PIR sensor detects the object, and then the ultrasonic sensor senses the distance at which the object is located. So sensing the presence in the field and then how far it is located from the boundary, etc. So this is very this is what is sensed using these two sensors. So this is the layered architecture that is followed in our specific implementation. This is what, as I told you, what we have actually implemented using real hardware in the field, and this is the architecture, the four layer architecture that we have adopted in this particular example. There are other applications of wireless sensor networks. Surveillance is a very important application. So surveillance using cameras, more specifically multimedia, cameras can be used to have something called wireless multimedia sensor networks. Wireless multimedia sensor networks have two types of nodes. One is called the scalar node, which measure data such as temperature, light, vibration, and so on. And in addition to the scalar sensor nodes, you have the camera sensor nodes, which capture multimedia such as video, audio, scalar video, audio data, and so on. And because of the fact that these camera sensors are more expensive and more resource consuming, more number of scalar sensors are used and lesser number of camera sensors are used in order to optimize the overall energy consumption and greater coverage and so on. So, as I said, that these multimedia sensor networks comprising of video sensors, camera sensors, plus the scalar sensors like temperature, light, etc., all of them together can be used in order to surveil a particular region and so on. Topology management is a very important concern when we are talking about multimedia sensor networks. Consumption, the video, basically, when we are using camera sensors or video sensors, these video sensors, they not only require large bandwidth for communication, but also they consume very high battery power. And how you are going to power them? So coverage of the event should be provided as soon as the event occurs, and connectivity is another important metric that should be provided during video data transfer from the event area to the control center. Therefore, what we have done is we have proposed a distributed topology management scheme for wireless multimedia sensor networks, considering coverage, connectivity, and lifetime. Finally, we come to the nano sensor networks. Nano sensor networks are basically the similar kind of concepts like the terrestrial sensor networks that we spoke about so far. So these terrestrial sensor networks are large scale wireless sensor nodes, MEMS based, typically MEMS based wireless sensor nodes, which are much bigger in size, and they can be seen through regular naked human eye. And on the other hand, nano sensors are nanoscale sensor networks. They the size of a nano power unit is in micrometers and nanometer, and in a nano device, like in a regular sensor node, we have different components of a nano device, and the dimensions are in the micrometer range, and the different components are nano sensors. And this is an example of a nano sensor, and the architecture, the diagram of a nano sensor, how it looks like. One of the very important things in the construction of a nano sensor is the carbon nanotube. So the carbon nanotube is used in a nano sensor, in the fabrication of a nano sensor. So nano sensors, nano actuators, nano memory, nano antenna, nano transceiver, nano processor, and so on. So these are the different components of a nano sensor node. The nano sensor networks, they can communicate in two forms: molecular communication and electromagnetic communication. In electromagnetic communication, basically the similar kind of thing that happens with electromagnetic communication in the big scale terrestrial sensor networks, those are basically brought down to nanometer micrometer scale, and they are used in the So they are used in the as nano devices. They are used as nano devices, and electromagnetic mode of communication is used. So these nano networks, they communicate in the terahertz band, and so the electromagnetic communication based communication is one aspect. So I have shown you how a nano antenna looks like. This is taken from the reference that is given at the bottom. Plus there is molecular communication as well. In molecular communication, it is a different type of communication where biochemical fluids and the body sensors are used to communicate between the different parts of the human body, and molecular means of communication using these biochemical fluids and biochemical medium is used. So gradients are set up, and because of these gradients, the biochemical fluids are going to flow between the different points, between through molecules and through different biosensors, on the inside the human body. So these are the two different modes of communication: electromagnetic communication and molecular communication, which are the two different modes of communication in a nanosensor network. So these are a large number of different references that we have collected for you. So just a few concluding points. So one thing is that you must have noted that I have often referred to some of the works that we have done. So remember that it is not required for you, unless you are very much interested to go through these papers to understand. If you are into research and you are interested in research on these particular aspects, then it is fine, but as such you are not required to go through any of these papers in detail. It is not required to expose you to the specific research, but to understand the broad concepts, the different types of applications of the sensor networks, and the solutions targeted to serving the different applications. So and because we have done me and my students, we have done lot of work, we have lot of contributions on wireless sensor networks. That is the reason why many of these previous slides you have seen papers that are from research works that we have done in the past. So with this, I would like to thank you for watching the second part of the lecture on the introductory aspects of wireless sensor networks. Thank you.